Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Christian McBride kicks off Black History Month this Friday at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. with The Movement Revisited, a tribute to Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King Jr., and Barack Obama. I spoke with the 7-time Grammy winner about his illustrious career, and we even bonded over a love for the movie Heat. Christian, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, let's start with this actual program at the Kennedy Center. There's going to be some music, some readings. Tell me about who all is going to be voicing these passages from famous Black figures throughout history, right?
That's correct. 4 in particular, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so the readers on the evening of February 4th will be Tamara Tooney, who will be reading the words of Rosa Parks, Dion Graham, who will be reading the words of Muhammad Ali, Vondi Curtis Hall, who will be reading the voice of the words of Malcolm X, and Keith David will be the voice of Martin Luther King Jr.
Wow, it doesn't get any bigger than that. Did I also read that you'll also be doing some readings and tributes to former President Obama?
Yeah, the 5th and final movement of this piece is called Apotheosis, November 4th, 2008. So that piece was written just as Obama was taking office. So the piece is not written for him per se. You know, I felt that in the context of this piece, it'd be quite premature to write something for a sitting president of only like 30 days, you know. But we all remember how we felt on that night of November 4th, 2008, seeing a African-American person become president of the United States. So that piece is dedicated to that night.
Oh, absolutely. None of us will forget where we were, and hard to believe it's been 14 years since that. Well, where is the time going?
That is scary.
Right?
That feels like it was yesterday.
It feels like not only the passage of time, but also just the direction, the direction we've gone since, all the hope and possibility of that day. And now, man, looking back, it's like we kind of lost our way in so many ways. Man, it's been wow, the past decade's been insane. Right.
That's no true words have been said.
Well, I'm sure truer words have been said, and some of them will be read at this event.
Right.
So, I mean, you sort of already segued into the music part with, talking about the piece you wrote on in November of 2008. But you said that's like the closing of the program. So,
right.
let's back up and why don't you take me through it, chronologically as we'll experience it at the Kennedy Center. What are the sort of the musical pieces that you're going to play throughout?
Well, it's this is my first ever long form. Opus, if you will. I guess you could call it that. I don't know. Yeah, it's basically it's my big band and the Howard University Gospel Choir. The Howard University Choir will be joining us for this performance, led by my collaborator in this piece, the great J.D. Steele. And also, Alicia Olatuja will be singing lead vocals on a couple of the movements that night. But in its current form, I wrote this in 2008. The Movement Revisited premiered at Walt Disney Concert Hall as a big band piece in the late spring of 2008. And of course, Obama was elected in November of 2008. By that time, I was already booked to play the Movement Revisited in Detroit in February of 2009. And the director in Detroit said, how would you feel if we commissioned you to write a fifth movement? And I said, sure, I can do that. And so that's how it developed.
Yeah, I can't imagine. You already wrote it. You had these concerts booked, and it must be almost like a documentary filmmaker. You think you have it done, and then something major happens, and you're like, boom! Now I got the end of my movie.
But, yeah, I saw an interview that Wayne Shorter gave one time. He's my favorite. Probably my favorite composer, certainly my favorite living composer. And he had done an album in the mid 90s where he took one of his old songs from the 60s and completely rewrote it. It's like if you didn't know the original version, you would think it was a brand new piece. And the guy was asking him what made him drastically change his old song up like that. He says, well, if we as human beings can evolve and change, so can a piece of music. Just because you recorded it 30 years ago doesn't mean it can't change. So I kind of feel that way with the movement revisited. Like you said, I thought this piece was all done. And then someone said, hey, well, how would you like to add to it? I went, well, okay, I don't know if I have time, but I'm going to make time. So I'm curious to see how this piece will evolve through the years, or I don't want to say if it evolves, but always takes a little. There's always some pleasant surprises when we play this piece live.
Oh, I'm sure. Well,
which doesn't happen often.
Well, yeah, well, that's got to be refreshing. So, all right. So, if the Barack Obama part that you wrote last minute, if that is the fifth movement of this opus, could you musically take me, the musicality of the first four pieces? Like what sort of stuff are you going for in those first four movements for Rosa and Malcolm and Ali and King?
Well, I did my best to capture what I thought would be the personalities, sort of the feels of each one of these icons. Ali, for obvious reasons, loud, brash, funky. Um, you know, Rosa Parks, quiet but very powerful. Malcolm X. With Malcolm, I specifically wanted to focus on the last year of his life. When he broke away from the Nation of Islam, he started his own organization, and he made his pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca, and he now started to see the world from a different lens, his own lens. I think he became such a man of great wisdom the last 12 months of his life. I really wanted to focus on that. So I wanted to capture some sort of sound of someone who sort of had this awakening, this sort of this moment of discovery, and one of the sounds that came to mind was sort of like late era Coltrane, and so it kind of lives in that, musical realm a little bit. And as for Martin Luther King, the movement that I wrote for King is actually sort of two parts. So the first part is called Soldiers, because that's how I think of him. I think of him as a freedom soldier. When you think about all of the marches that he led and all of the sit-ins, there's something majestic and powerful about seeing him march. So therefore, I think of him as a soldier. But at the same time, he sort of encompasses what we all preach but don't practice. I deeply admire Martin Luther King Jr. because I think, well, on second thought, I think almost everyone in this piece. It's your beliefs are not what make you a good person. It's your actions. So I find that in today's social media world, there's always a lot of grandstanding. There's always a lot of hashtags. There's always a lot of slogans. There's always a lot of T-shirts. There's always a lot of FaceTime if you say what you believe. But there's not a lot of FaceTime in putting what you believe into actual practice.
Right.
And I find that with King, the way he was able to really withstand all of the hatred that came his way and was able to filter that into something positive and meaningful. I wanted to capture that in his second movement, which is called A View from the Mountaintop. So there's soldiers and a view from the mountaintop, and then the piece itself ends with apotheosis.
Gotcha. And so just so I have it for my purposes, I want to make sure I have the order correct. Does it start with Rosa Parks and then go into Malcolm and then Ali, or does it open with Ali?
Nope, you nailed it. Starts with Rosa. Ladies first. Always ladies first.
Of course. A back seat to no one in this concert.
There
All right,
you go.
so it's Rosa, Malcolm, Ali, King, Obama.
Yep.
That's the order.
Yep.
Great. Thank you for walking me through that musically. I love how and it must have been a cool challenge to try to find instruments and arrangements that would create a for Rosa, quiet but powerful. For Malcolm,
Right.
this awakening you're talking about. For Ali, rumble, young man, rumble,
Right.
energy. King, I guess what did you say? Oh, marching like a foot soldier, and then
Right.
Obama is this like I guess final apotheosis, transcendent sort
Exactly.
of possibility. That's great. Well, we've talked about all these huge handful of icons, but let's hear a little bit more about yourself. Whenever I have someone like yourself on, man, a 7-time Grammy winner, I want to hear about your journey a little bit. So I know you were born in Philly in 1972. How did you get into music to begin with? Like, what was it always jazz playing around the house, or what sort of stuff did you listen to growing up?
Well, my father is also a professional bass player, and so is my uncle, my great uncle. So it runs in the family. Both of them having played a lot of jazz and a lot of rhythm and blues and soul music. So that's pretty much the music that I was raised on. Motown, James Brown, Al Green, Aretha Franklin. That really is sort of that's my bone marrow, as I like to say.
I
Uh,
love that.
and then when I got to middle school and started playing I started on the electric bass. I was 9 years old when I first started playing the electric bass, and then when I got to middle school and started playing the acoustic bass, my great uncle now comes into the picture, and he was so excited that I was playing the upright bass. He gave me basically what turned out to be a crash course in jazz, and the way he taught me about the music was so wonderful and so entertaining. He single-handedly sparked my love for jazz, and that's how I fell in love with jazz.
That's great. Now, I know you went to Juilliard and, studied it little more seriously at that point. And some people called you a bit of a teen prodigy. Are you self-aware enough at that point to look around like, hey, I'm a prodigy? Or are you just sort of just beating on the craft like anyone else at that point?
No, I actually I I was aware that I was being called a teen prodigy, and it was for that reason I wanted to make good on the potential everyone thought I had. I didn't want to be. See, first of all, it really was. It was good for me to come from Philadelphia because I was one of many teen prodigies. There was a lot of teen prodigies in the city. My best friend in high school was Joey DeFrancesco. Joey DeFrancesco was playing professional gigs at single digit age. So uh, even though I was hailed as a teen prodigy, I was nowhere near considered the best teen prodigy. So um, and then there were people like I don't know, maybe people you might not know, but people like Antonio Parker, who's from Philadelphia. In fact, he's been in DC for many years. Great saxophone player, Donald Ward. It was all kinds of people in Philly who were teen prodigies. So my goal was to make sure that I wasn't going to be like this sort of cliche child star that burns out at age 20. So I wanted to be around all of the best musicians I could be around, and take my cues from them. uh Try to go find Ron Carter, go find Ray Brown, go find Ray Drummond, Marcus Miller, all of the best bass players you can find, Buster Williams, and let them tell you what you need to work on. So I never got too hung up on me being a teen prodigy. I wanted to work. I wanted the older musicians who I admired call me for gigs.
Right, exactly. Well, here I was thinking Philly was the city of brotherly love, and sounds like it's the city of a bunch of teen prodigies. You just sound like a bunch of you guys were teen prodigies. Well, I love that you didn't get caught up in that, and you just wanted to do it about the work. So obviously you were doing Bobby Watson's group Horizon at the back then. Take me into how you released that, I guess your first debut album yourself. It was called Getting To It in
Right.
'95. Can you even look back on the first one today
Oh yeah.
and admire it? Like, are you still proud of that one?
I'm very proud of my first album. I wish I can go back and fix a couple of edits. Couple of wrong notes there, here and there, but overall, that was I don't know. There's something about between the ages of 18 and 25, those sort of life shaping moments. You never forget them. The good and the bad. It's like they're they're like push pins. You go back and they never leave your memory. And when I think back to 1994 when I recorded that record, it was a rare time in the history of jazz where there started to be a little bit of crossover interest because there was something that they called the Young Lions era, and the Marsalis brothers had become very very hot in the '80s, and they had brought jazz to a wider audience than jazz had seen probably since the late '50s. And so with that, there was sort of a spin-off group, if you will. And those were people like me, Roy Hargrove, Joshua Redman, James Carter, Stephen Scott, Greg Hutchinson, Mark Whitfield. And there were a bunch of major record labels who, like I said, for about 15 minutes, were interested in actually signing, jazz artists, like acoustic, traditional jazz artists. So when I signed my first record deal in '94, that was pretty much at the height of that Young Lions era. And when they asked me what did I want to do for my first record, just from not just a musical standpoint, but also from a business standpoint, I thought, well, this is a no-brainer. The people I want to use on this recording happen to be all my friends who are very popular at the moment. Roy Hargrove, Joshua Redman, Cyrus Chestnut, Lewis Nash, the great Steve Torre played a little bit. And I was joined by two of my biggest heroes, Ray Brown and Milt Hinton, to do a track with just three unaccompanied basses. So yeah, I mean that we recorded that album on August 30th, 31st, and September 1st, 1994. That's how well I remember making my first album.
Man, '94 was apparently a big year for Young Lions because that's the year Simba came out too. That was that
Ah,
year, man. Hey, sorry, that's the best pun I
now
can do.
now
Do
was
off of
that
'94.
information on the front of you? Really, you knew the date that well? That's deep.
Oh, well, yeah. You're the music guy, man. I'm the movie guy. If you throw out a date, I can tell you anything. What won Best Picture, all that stuff. I don't know. I don't know why.
It's good to know.
Try it. Say a year. Let's go.
Well, I know Heat came out in '95, right?
Yeah, with Pacino and De Niro, man.
Yes.
That's hard. It's hard to top that. That scene with them in like the diner, man. Is that one of your favorites?
Oh, that's definitely one of my top 10 movies of all time.
Well, they were getting to it while you were getting to it. Was that Michael Mann directing that, right?
Michael
Yeah, that
Mann, that's absolutely right.
man,
And
man, that
for every time I became the creative chair for jazz with the LA Philharmonic from 2006 to 2010, and every time I would go to LA, oftentimes I would stay downtown, and every time I would go downtown, I would take a walk and I would say, hey, this is where the shooting scene was in Heat.
that's so cool. Yeah, that one of the perks of being in LA, I guess.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, I know around that same time, tell me about Super Bass, a bit of a super group, if you will, because you mentioned Ray Brown earlier, but that was with you, Ray, and who else? John Clayton, I
John
guess.
Clayton, that's right.
How did that formation come together?
I got to meet Ray Brown in 1991, and Ray became one of my greatest mentors. He became like a second father to me, and so much of what I learned and inspired me on the bass came directly from him. So it was the honor of a lifetime when December 1992 he called and said he had a concert in Pittsburgh, and he said, I want to try a little something different. Uh, why don't you and John join me in Pittsburgh and we'll do like a three bass thing? And I was just going out of my head, like, are you serious? I'm about to play with Ray Brown, and that's how Super Bass was born. He we did that concert in December '92, and then I would say at least once a year for the rest of Ray's life, we did a Super Bass concert somewhere. We played the Hollywood Bowl. We did 2 live albums, one in Boston, one in New York. We played in Seattle. I mean, we were fortunate to play together quite a bit.
I love it. Yeah, I love when you collaborate and hook up with all those other greats around your peers at the same time. And then I guess after that, what from 2000 to 2008, you had Christian McBride band. How did you see sort of your career evolving? Let's say by that point compared to getting to it, like are you like really coming into your own at that point?
Yeah, that was an interesting period because right around 2000, 2001, two things were starting to peak. Um, in the late 90s, there had been this resurgence of classic soul. They called it the neo soul era. So, Lauryn Hill, Erica Badu, D'Angelo, and my homies from Philadelphia, the Roots.
Right.
And Questlove, put together a group called the Soul Aquarians, working with D'Angelo and all of these things that he was doing. So there was also this uptick in classic soul sound. And also the jam band movement started to get really huge. Medeski, Martin, and Wood were getting hot at that time. John Scofield had this resurgence in his career. Charlie Hunter was huge. Soul Live was huge. And so, at the time I was only 28, and I thought, well, this is sort of my wheelhouse anyway. So let me get a little taste of this, but I didn't want to play straight R&B. I didn't want to play straight jam band. I realized that I had jazz and classical training. So let me try to come up with a band that could be a little bit of all of that. So I wound up putting together a group that I actually didn't think was going to stay together that long. I was having bad luck keeping bands together from like 98 through, like for like a 2-year span there. But the real uh, the person that really sort of made that band happen aesthetically the way I wanted it to was the great Jeff Keezer, because I wanted somebody who not only played piano, but I needed somebody who was a good keyboard player as well. And anytime you find someone who likes Thelonious Monk and McCoy Tyner on equal footing with like Thomas Dolby and Brian Eno and Joe Zawinul and Keith Emerson and George Duke, I went, that's the guy I want,
That's my
but
guy.
yeah, exactly. But Keezer was so in demand, I didn't think I'd be able to keep him. And fortunately, he really loved being in the band so much. And Ron Blake, the great saxophone player, he became like the anchor of the group. Um, I call Ron sort of the anti-saxophone player because most saxophone players who play jazz, they tend to play a lot of notes. It's a Coltrane, Rollins, Shorter, Brecker dominated world when it comes to jazz tenor saxophone. But Ron Blake was somehow able to play very modern and contemporary while not beating you over the head with a flurry of notes all the time. He actually would like to play a note and hold it. You know, he actually would play a note and then stop and rest for a few beats. Like, wow, this is very unlike most saxophone players I know. And in terms of the drums, uh, my sort of my favorite drummer for the kind of band I wanted was Jeff Tane Watts. But of course, Jeff Tane Watts is one of the legends, and he was busy still playing with Branford Marsalis at that time. So I asked Tane, I said, "Hey, who's the mini you?" And he said, "Hey, there's this young guy from East St. Louis. He just started playing with Diane Reeves. Why don't you check him out? His name is Terrion Gully." So in the fall of 2000, Terrion Gully, Jeff Keezer, Ron Blake, and myself, we started playing together, and we recorded Vertical Vision for Warner Brothers, and we also did Live at Tonic. And right around the time we did Live at Tonic, Ron got the job playing with the Saturday Night Live band on NBC. Jeff Keezer got married and moved to California. Terrion Gully got married and moved to Atlanta. So real life kind of split the band apart, but we're all still the best of friends. And one of these days we will play together. Well, what am I talking about? We're going to play together Friday night
at the Kennedy Center. One of these days is literally in days.
That's right. It's just such a different context with the Movement Revisited versus what we did on Vertical Vision and Live at Tonic. But yeah, anytime I play a Movement Revisited, I always call the brothers from the CMB.
Awesome. I love it. The Christian McBride Band. And thanks for walking me through all that stuff with, back in those days too with Questlove, because I remember the Philadelphia Experiment was a cool project with him, and you've just worked with so many cool people over. But sort of bringing it full circle to the Kennedy Center. Didn't you do something with them for the Kennedy Center honors back in 2011? Was it did you help produce or did you perform?
Yes.
For Sonny Rollins?
Yes. I was brought in to co-produce Sonny Rollins's tribute, and that was pretty heavy, man. My first television credit, and yeah, that was pretty spectacular. Being able to do that for Sonny and have all those great legends there: Jimmy Heath, Benny Golson, Jack DeJohnette, Billy Drummond, Joe Lovano, Robbie Coltrane, Roy Hargrove, Jim Hall, Herbie Hancock. That was a memorable day.
Yeah, that's an all-timer night right there. Well, cool. I really appreciate you joining us. Really quick, I want to ask about, before we run the 7 Grammys, are each one as special as the others? By the time when you win the first one, it's got to be such a joy, and then by the time you get to 7, it must be like, you giving it to me again?
No. Well, my history with Grammys started off on such a funny foot. That my first Grammy, I was not aware that I was eligible for it. Therefore, I didn't know that I won. So I just get this box in the mail one day from the Recording Academy. I thought it was like a Christmas basket or
right,
something like
the
that.
End of the year swag they send.
Exactly. I'm thinking it might be a hoodie and a some coffee mug or something in there.
Right, a keychain.
And I open it up and it's a Grammy, and I went, what? And I had played on this record of McCoy Tyner's, but I'd been on a lot of records as a sideman and never received the Grammy. So I wondered why this was different. And then I started learning all of these rules about, where the credits are if your name is on the cover of the album, then you are eligible for a Grammy. So that record was not credited to McCoy Tyner. It was credited to McCoy Tyner, Terrence Blanchard, Gary Bartz, Christian McBride, and Lewis Nash. So therefore, all 5 of us were eligible for a Grammy, even though it was McCoy Tyner's album. Now, funny enough, a few years later, Dee Dee Bridgewater did an album, and she said, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure all of you guys' names get on the cover of the album, so in case I win, all of you get Grammys. She won the Grammy, and we found out that that rule only applies to instrumental records, not vocal records.
Oh, no.
We're like, man, you guys with all these rules.
Yeah, what the heck? Music's not supposed to have rules. I just want to know what kind of postage is required for it to ship a Grammy.
Well, I mean, it's actually not. It's
not too heavy.
No, not too heavy, but certainly it means a lot, man. It's wonderful to when I finally went to the Grammys and heard my name get called as a winner and had to go up and make a speech. Yeah, that's a feeling you'll never forget.
What year was that?
2012.
Okay. And for what project? Just so I have it in my notes.
Yeah, that was for my first big band album, The Good Feeling.
Gotcha. And so what do you even remember being on stage, or is it like a blur like everybody else says? Like the lights hit you and they play you off with the music, or what? Is it a whirlwind?
Oh man, it's incredible. That adrenaline goes through you, and you tell yourself like, okay, be succinct. Try not to get up there and ramble. There's a show going on. Get your words together and get on out.
Well, I appreciate you getting your words together and getting on out for a full half hour with us. I can't believe I didn't even know we'd go this long. So I appreciate you sticking around for the duration here. It was fun getting to do a journey through your own career here a little bit.
It was my pleasure, man.
Well, we're excited to see the McBride band back together in just days on Friday.
Right.
It's called The Movement Revisited, everybody. It's at the Kennedy Center Concert Hall. They're going to salute Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, MLK, and Barack Obama. It'll be this Friday, February 4th at 8 p.m., so get your tickets now. Hey, Christian McBride, thanks so much. It was great meeting you.
My pleasure. You too, man.
All right, now go watch Heat.
Right.
All right, later, man.
Take care, man.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the D.C. area is great, and Podcast D.C. gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast D.C. is the new local app with hundreds of D.C. area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast D.C.